Hey everybody, welcome to my Ask Me Anything. Thanks for being a part of this. You know I love doing these, right? I'm going to try to get to as many questions as possible, including questions that just come in from people leaving comments. So definitely start leaving comments immediately. But anyone who is a Patreon subscriber or a YouTube member and submitted a question ahead of time is guaranteed to have me answer one of their questions. I can't guarantee that you're going to like the answer. In some cases, I don't even have an answer, but I will address the questions guaranteed if you are a YouTube member or Patreon subscriber. And there's links to become that if you would like to in the video description. See, look at this guy who left a comment, Adam S. Yo to you, Adam S. This is like model behavior, leaving a comment. I love that. Everyone should just practice doing that, just like Adam did. In the meantime, while you guys get comfortable experimenting with the comment function, I'm just going to start doing some of the questions I got from my Patreon subscribers. Okay, here's one from a guy named Jim. Let's get the comment on the board here. Will you ever become advanced enough to kill us with an 8-string guitar solo? I'm a little scared to even ask. Well, you don't have to be scared. I think the answer is probably not. You know, I mean, I've never even done 7-string. I've never even done 7-string. So 8-string is like far outside my comfort zone. I mean, I don't even really have anything clever to say about this. I got used to 6-string. I don't even really leave standard tuning anymore. I mean, it's not, I don't even have a reason for that. Like, there's cool other tunings, but I just, you know, it's like at some point you need to have boundaries somewhere. You know what I mean? So I just decided to live with 6 strings and standard tuning. Who knows if that was the right choice? I heard of a band once where they like tuned up. Like normally when people leave standard tuning, they go down. But I heard of a band once that like tuned up to F or something just because it made everything brighter. And I feel like that's advanced, you know? So how come I'm not doing that? I don't know. Why am I not even doing that? Because I live in fear, I guess. So yeah, I don't have like an issue with it. Like I don't consider more strings to be like a moral failure. I'll tell you when I judge something to be a moral failure. That comes up on these Ask Me Anythings. I got no problem. I have no problem telling you where I see the moral decay in our society. But this is not one of those. I don't. I'm still struggling to use even all the pro tips I put on my YouTube videos. You know what I mean? There's like 5 fucking weird, cool sounds in every single petted video I make. I'm still just trying to get to the bottom of that list. So if I start putting more strings on the guitar, it's just like, when am I going to finish? Also, here's the last thing I'll say about this. This is the part where I'm like, now I'm trying to give you a good answer. I'm like being self-conscious about the answer not having been good enough to this point. So we'll see if what comes next is even worse. I kind of like train my ears to get used to like the range of the guitar in standard tuning with 6 strings. You know what I mean? I'm like, usually when I come up with guitar tones, I'm thinking, well, if I use this on a record, I want it to sound good with drums and bass. And like that changes a little bit if you have a lower string than the low E. You know what I mean? Like a lot of guitar sounds that sound good for the range of the instrument I have spent time on. And if I start making the range lower, what used to be a good bass sound and a good drum sound is like maybe not going to be as good anymore, because like guitar, bass, and drums all sort of have to fit together, you know. And the other thing too is that like good drum sounds and bass sounds don't just live under the guitar. I mean, some of you are going to know this already, but like, you know, a cool bass sound that has some attack on it or even a little bit of distortion, some of those frequencies, the vzz, vzz, on the attack of a bass note, that's like up sort of in guitar town. So you want to make sure you're like, it's not just the guitar has to be on top of bass. They sort of need to be able to like interlock. And the same with like a bass drum sound or a snare drum sound. A snare drum sound has like all kinds of noise frequencies in it. It takes up a lot of space. And like even a bass drum sound, you know, it's called bass drum, but there's like there's the sound of the like mallet hitting the thing, which isn't the bassiest sound in the world. And if you lose that, the bass part of the bass drum is like kind of useless. Like you need a little bit of the stick part of it. So I guess what I'm saying is like I've been doing my best frantically trying to come up with guitar tones that do not obliterate the space for those other things. And like it's not impossible to leave space for them with 7 and 8 string guitars, but like I'm behind on that. I would have to catch up to even learn how to do it. So there's my answer. All right. What is the best virtual guitar teacher on the interwebs? I don't know if this is like deliberately trying to be a softball question. If you're asking me, I'm going to say my YouTube channel, but I don't even think that my YouTube channel is like anywhere near good enough to replace having a real teacher. I think you should just get real guitar lessons from a real teacher. I think that's what everybody should do. You can learn a lot from the stuff that's on the internet, but I don't think any of it is a replacement for taking real lessons. I do give real lessons on Zoom. I'll put a link to that in the video description too. Or there's already a link to it in like all of my other pedal videos. You can study with me if you want on Zoom. I teach Zoom. I'd be happy to. I think doing that is better than trying to learn stuff about how to play guitar from my pedal videos. I mean, I think you can learn a little bit about pedals from my pedal videos, but I would say that like I think you need a real teacher. If you want me to be a real teacher, I'd be happy to do it. We can do something on Zoom. Oh, look at this. Hi, Denise. Will Sweet Fix ever reunite? I hope you're doing well, Denise. Nice to hear from you. So Denise is an old friend. I used to be in a band called Sweet Fix. Will they ever reunite? I don't know. I always miss playing that material. It would be fun to play together again. I have no idea. The Sweet Fix is an old band I used to be in. If you guys are curious about it, you can look up the Bandcamp page. We're still on Bandcamp. It would be fun to play some of that stuff again. I think about that sometimes. I have no idea what the future holds, though. Okay, moving right along. What is the worst gig you've ever played? However you define a bad gig. You see how fun the questions are on my Ask Me Anythings? Every time I've ever done an Ask Me Anything, I've said, you can really ask me anything. Try to make me regret saying that. I've never regretted it. No one's ever done it. I'm fully aware that there are questions you could ask that would make me regret it. I have boundaries. I know what they are. Every time I do one of these, I'm like, this could be the day they find the boundary. You know what I mean? But this is nowhere even close. I'm happy to tell you about the worst gig I've ever played. It was at my old high school. It's not when I was in high school. It's after I graduated high school. And then a couple years later, I went back to my high school and played a gig. So I don't know. I was like 23 or 24 or something. And the band I was just talking about, my old band Sweet Fix, had a gig at my old high school, Leonia High School in New Jersey. We went back and like we just played on a Friday night in like the auditorium. And I've been out of high school long enough so that like no one who was in high school, like the freshmen who had been freshmen when I was a senior, were already gone. But like maybe some people had still heard of me because I was like recently graduated and I was in a band and I was doing it. So like maybe some of the kids who were interested in music or like doing that might have known that I was a guy who was trying to do it. So, that was the audience. It was like the audience was like, which kids in high school want to see a 23-year-old in a rock band? It was not everybody in the entire high school. It was interesting to me. It wasn't like every single kid was like, oh, sure, 23-year-old in a rock band. We'll see that. It was like some kids came, but I guess you're probably wondering, like, at what point in the story is it the story of the worst gig I ever had? Well, my amp broke in like early on in the set. I showed up with a Marshall half stack, and it just broke like maybe 2 songs in, 3 songs in. And like, everyone who hears the story is like, well, you brought a backup, right? And like, I didn't. Judge me how you will. I didn't. I just sort of figured this night was going to go well for me. I was going back to my high school. I like got the half stack out of my parents' house. I was like, fortune is on my side here, which is just like so clearly the wrong game plan. So I didn't bring it back. Also, it was just like I had to drive there in my car. Like, how am I gonna bring 2 fucking half stacks? That's the other thing. Is like, give me a break. Like, I got to bring 2 half stacks to the auditorium in Leonia High School. Like, come on, let's be realistic. So, my amp broke on like the second song, and like I tried to fix it real quick. I tried to do the thing where like I just the band keeps going and I turn around, I just like make sure the cable's in it, and I bang on it and I like jiggle everything. I try to just fix it mid song, and like that didn't work. So we had to like stop playing. And I remember like kids left. Like I remember, this is why the reason it's the worst gig ever is because like I turned around and like 17-year-old children were like walking out on my show just because the amp had broke. And I thought I was coming back to my high school to be like, you see, kids, you can do it. You can make a career in music. It's hard, but you can do it. And these kids were just like, well, I guess you can't. I guess you can. This is the guy who's supposed to be doing it, and doesn't seem like it's going very well for him. So kids left. Some kids stayed. And we ended up like, we had to do the thing where it was like, is there anyone in the audience who has a guitar amplifier that our guy could borrow? And some, lucky kid got to let me use his like crate amp because he had it that day at school or whatever. And so I finished the gig on some kid's amp. It was probably cool for that kid. That kid probably remembers that night very differently because he saved the day. But it was rough. It was hard to then finish. I didn't care about now I'm playing through a kid's amp. That part was fine to me. But it was just hard to be like, well, everyone in the audience is the kids who were nice to us. You know what I mean? It was like, now we're playing for a group of kids who were kind because we fucked up and they didn't leave. And like that was just like not the vibe of my rock and roll fantasy when I was 23 years old. So, bring a backup amp, I guess, is the moral of the story. Next question. Are you excited for the Chase Bliss Mood Mark II stereo? I am. Definitely am. Yeah, definitely am. I would love to use the Mood in stereo. Also, didn't I read something about there's going to be some crazy thing where like it can take MIDI and then play notes used like by creating a pitch shift with the clock speed. It can like be played as an instrument with MIDI input. I heard something like that. That's so cool. This is one of the few times where I feel like everybody who makes a video about it is going to talk about that. And I'm also going to talk about that. Normally when I make a pedal video, I sort of be like, well, what are the things that everybody's going to talk about? And I can't talk about that, right? My video has to be the thing that like nobody talks about. And it's really going to be hard for me to give that up with Mood number 2 if it can do that. So, maybe I'll find some like other angle on that about how that no one else thought of. I hope so. I sure hope so. All right. Okay. Oh, here's a cool one. Here's a like more sort of creative one. This was from Luca Garcia Ferrari. All right. The question is, how do you balance your artistic side, in other words, cyber attack, when playing sessions? Or do you focus on serving the song artist? Do you just become a normal guitarist at that stage? This is a cool question. So, some of what I do as a professional guitar player, a big part of my day is like going back to my high school and having my amp break while I perform for children. I try to do that like 5 to 6 times a week. And then the other part of my life is sometimes, right, I just get called to be a guitar player on someone else's record. So how do I balance my like cyber attack side? I think what you mean there is like my desire to just play weird shit and get sort of out there and like hostile and like fuck with expectations. How do I balance that? Well, there's like a couple levels to this. One is at this point, usually I get called because they want something kind of weird. I like at this point enough people know what I do that if they want me to play on it, they want me to do something like surprising and different and kind of weird. So I don't really have to do much of a balancing act. They like want something weird. But sometimes they want me to play straight, and I can do that. I mean, I think it helps that I can play straight, you know? Like if they just want me to play like bluesy classic rock or follow the changes or just like do whatever it is, I can do that stuff. Um, I also find it helps to prepare. Like if they can send the track early or they can tell me what they want early, um, you know, the more prepar so the best thing you can do is sort of show up and like already know how to give them what they want, or just adapt as quickly as possible to what they want. Because if you can just sort of give them the thing they want for the track, whatever it is, however normal it is, I find a lot of times once you do that, it's like the whole sort of mood in the studio changes once they know that they got a take they can use to get the thing they always wanted. And then a lot of times you can say like, okay, we got it, but you want to try something weird. And at this point, they're like open to it because they know that they already got what they really wanted. So they're like happy to hear other things. So that helps. It helps if you can just sort of like nail the assignment right away. So that's what I try to do, whatever the assignment is. I just try to nail it however they want. Um, and then sometimes I can introduce some weird stuff. I mean, so I guess I would say like I am aware that I fall back on the fact that like I took a lot of guitar lessons and um I didn't even really care about pedals and effects until I've been playing guitar for like 10 years or something. I've talked about this in other live streams, but like, you know, I cared about being able to play straight for a long time. Um, there was a while when like I had a job at some point in my early 20s as like an intern at a studio. I worked for this guy who basically had like a anything you need recording studio, like soup to nuts music creation production. He could sometimes he would write songs, sometimes he would ask me to reverse engineer some indie song that a client wanted that they couldn't license. Sometimes he would just make records for other people. It was sort of like he basically tried to he was this guy with a studio who could play and produce and basically wanted to be able to get as much work as possible, and I was the intern. And when I started out it was like very intern, you know, like I wanted to play on stuff but I couldn't do that. I had to like prove myself first, you know, so I would start by like cleaning and vacuuming and like getting people's lunch and stuff. And then finally he let me try playing on a track, and I knew this was like my big break. Like if I did good, then he would let me do this because there was all kinds of stuff to play on. And if I fucked up, I'd never get another shot because he was just like that kid is just here to sweep. Um, and the track was like had sort of a 70s vibe where it was like in between classic rock and sort of R&B, you know, sort of like a band like Chicago or like the Doobie Brothers, where there's even guitar solos in it, but it's sort of groovy and there's also be like a horn section involved, like that style of music. Um, and I like heard the song and he was like, tomorrow, why don't you come in? He sent me the song and it was tomorrow, why don't you bring a guitar and we can try to put something down over that. So I worked something out, and it was like a little showy. Like I worked something out that was like kind of classic rock. Like I'm sure I had some like bends and stuff in it, but I remember trying to maybe also like do a little bit of sweep picking over some changes or something. You know, like I remember pushing the envelope a little bit. I was like, you know, I'm gonna play some like aggressive shit here. Uh, and the guy was like, okay, you know, I see you worked on that. I respect that. Didn't sound bad, but that's just not what we're doing here. Well, let's try another one. This time, give me something like George Benson. And then he went to push record. And so I had like about 2 to 3 seconds to like load George Benson and play a George Benson thing. And there's a lot I could say about this. There's like many different levels to what does it even mean to sound like George Benson. You know, people can mean a lot of different things. I mean, that guy's put out a lot of work. He's got some range. um and there's a level of it that like could be kind of intense and hardcore, you know what I mean? Like some people who are really into George Benson think of George Benson as the guy who like invented harmonizing a dominant 7 chord by playing Dorian a half step above the root. So it's sort of like the altered scale, but you have a major seventh in there too. I think that's something I've read that like some people associate as like a George Benson thing. At this moment in my life, when I had to do a George Benson take and I was 24 years old, that was not on the table. I think if you'd said that sentence to me, I would have been able to understand what you meant, but I would not have been able to improvise with that in a way that sounded like I knew what I was doing. The best I could do would be to like put Dorian a half step above the root of the dominant seventh chord and have it sound like I was trying something. And usually in session world, if it sounded like you were trying something, that's an indication of failure. It should just sound like you meant to do it. Everything you ever hear on a real record should sound like it was meant to be like that. So, there's levels to set. Here's another way to put it. If I was looking at Quincy Jones on the other side of the glass and he said, okay, Ivan, give me something like George Benson would do, I would try it and then I would probably get fired. If it's Quincy Jones, he would probably just say, you know what, kid, good try, but I'm just going to call George. Lucky for me, it wasn't Quincy Jones. It was just this guy who I worked for. So part of me was like, okay, well, maybe by George Benson, he just means play something kind of smooth and buttery and cool like. Maybe that's what George Benson means. And so I just tried to do that. And in the 2 seconds it took for him to say, give me something like George Benson and push record, I was just like, let's hope he just means sort of cool and like smooth. And then I did my best to do that. And he was like, oh, good. Maybe I switched pickups. I think I had my Gibson SG that day. I probably went to like rhythm pickup and like rolled off the volume and maybe even turned the tone down a little bit and just like tried to live in that world. And he was like, oh yeah, real good. So I passed. So, what was the point of that story again? Oh yeah, right. So the point is like, being able to just give people the goods like that is an important skill. Even though like I never really aspired to being a guy who can do an impression of any guitar player, and I also can't. I mean, there's a limit to my ability to do any of this. What I cared about was like playing shit where people are like, I don't know who that is or who could possibly play that or what instrument that is, right? The thing I always aspire to is to play guitar solos where people are just like, how did that happen? Like, I don't even understand like what instrument it was or how it was executed. Like, what the fuck did I just hear? You know what I mean? Like, that's always what I've wanted to do, but along the way to trying to be able to do that, I also tried to put together like the ability to just sort of be a versatile pro, and that does come in handy. So the answer to the question is like, I try to be, I try to just not be pushy at all if I want to make a suggestion about maybe we could do something weirder on this track. I mean, sometimes they're like, okay, Ivan, you know what to do, in which case I just start by doing weird, cool shit. But even there, I'm still listening. That's the other thing, is that I don't just sort of go to my licks or like go to like, oh, this always blows people away. I don't do that. I like try to listen to what's there. And then I just like try to hear something that is like, oh, what would be weird is if there was some kind of like, if there was something there that just sort of sounded like a tree branch on fire. And I'd be like, oh yeah, okay, I don't know how to do that, but I don't know where I got that from, but this thing wants there to be like a burning tree branch during the verse. So how can I put a burning tree branch on? Yeah, like I try to be inspired. You know what I mean? I try to grab onto something weird and then chase that. The other thing I'll do is like, I'll also sometimes I have to look up my own YouTube videos. Not to be, I don't mean this in a tacky way. I just mean like sometimes I'll be like, oh yeah, what was the setting? Like, right, there was I think in my like, in the video I made about the mood, there's a sound in that video that has one of those. And like, I'll have to go on my phone, look up my own YouTube channel and find the video and then look at the settings that I put in the video description and try to recreate it that way. I'll do that sometimes. All right, look at I like the emotional check-in questions. How are you? I'm good. How are you? I love doing Ask Me Anything, so I'm in a great mood. I hope you're doing well too. Thanks for the check-in. Um, okay, let's just keep moving right along. Oh, here's a fun one. This is from Joel A. Pickled. What is your favorite Nine Inch Nails guitar riff? Um, the answer to this is Discipline. The song Discipline. I really love that riff, and I also feel like it's also like kind of it fits the rules for being like a classic guitar riff. Like when I was 13 and like first learning to play guitar, the riffs you would learn were all sort of like macho and cool, and they sounded identifiable by themselves. Like if you play the Crazy Train riff by itself, um, it sounds like Crazy Train. It's not like you're just comping and playing to a progression, and if you could hear the progression, then you would know what song it is. Like the riff from Heartbreaker, it's like, oh, that's that song. So I feel like the Discipline riff in that Nine Inch Nails song, it has that, and it's also like catchy and cool. It's not stupidly complicated, but it is sort of out there. And it's also a guitar. I mean, there's a lot of Nine Inch Nails stuff I love that I think is like very catchy and amazing, but it's like kind of more on the production level or like on the synthesizer level. Um, on a second to second basis, many Nine Inch Nails songs are just like a world of wonders and all this sort of stuff that's happening sonically. Uh, um, so, I think that's my answer. Discipline by Nine Inch Nails. I also remember that record came out in the summer of 2007, and I'm sort of nostalgic for that reason too, because I remember that summer that was also the year that the Smashing Pumpkins got back together and put out Zeitgeist, and I didn't even know they were going to do that until I heard Tarantula on the radio, and I was like, that's another thing about 2007 is that I was listening to like FM radio in my car. Um, and I heard a new Smashing Pumpkin song, and Nine Inch Nails put out a record, and there was a Foo Fighters record I liked that summer that was cool. Maybe it was the one that has Pretender on it. I remember that summer feeling like the 90s were kind of back. So I have a soft spot for Discipline and that whole record, and the Smashing Pumpkins Zeitgeist record too. Smashing Pumpkins Zeitgeist record. I just love the Krispy Kreme hat. Good to see you too, man. You too. Thank you. I'm glad you like the Krispy Kreme hat. I like Krispy Kreme donuts so much that I bought the hat. I was wondering if you could suggest a basic book for programming a synth. So no, I mean, I didn't really learn how to do that from reading a book. So I'm sorry. Um, I learned a lot about this because I took a music engineering class when I was in college, and it wasn't like a synthesizer class. It was like a recording studio class, and it was like setting microphones and learning about the science of sound and that stuff. But a lot of that stuff does help you program a synth. I mean, it's not going to like tell you what the knobs are doing necessarily, but like understanding more about how sound is generated, is useful sometimes. Um, and so there was a textbook that we read in that class. I mean, this is not a good answer to your question. It's not really answering your question, but the best I can do for you is that there's a book about like the science of recording sound by a guy named Alex Case. What was his fucking I'm really sorry. The best I can do to remember the textbook I read in college was that the guy's last name was Case. If there's like a music textbook or like a recording engineer textbook by a guy whose last name is Case, um, I thought it was a good textbook, and he explained stuff about I bet that he explained stuff like what frequency modulation is and stuff like that would help you learn to do synths. So I'm sorry. One thing I am going to do for my Patreon people and my YouTube member people is to like do a live stream where I just basically tell you everything I remember from learning in that class. Like I want to do a live stream where I basically just try to summarize everything I learned in the college music engineering course I took. And so like the pros for you is that you'll be getting sort of like the information of a college level audio engineering class, for a lot less than what college tuition costs. The bad news is that it's like going to be very much the budget value version of it because it's just what I remember from a class I took a while ago. So if that seems like a good deal for you, you should just like join my Patreon for 1 month. I'll do it next month. Join my Patreon for the month of June. What's next month? April. Did you hear me almost say June? That's fucked up. My mind is going. That lecture is going to be bad. I don't even know what time it is. Anyway, if you want to take a chance on me, you could join my Patreon or my YouTube membership thing. There's links in the video description for the month of April. And I'll try to do this like live stream lecture where I just explain the science of sound from like the moment, like if I say a thing, if I say, Van Halen into the microphone, like what happens from me saying it to it going into the microphone, to it going into the things, to it going into computer, to it looking like a waveform. What is that? And when we hear it, why do we hear it? Like, I'm going to try to demystify the science of sound completely. It's going to be like a really intense 90-minute thing where I basically just try to jailbreak an entire college course for you. Okay, cool. What else we got here? Let's keep going. Oh, all right. Here's the pedal one. Honest thoughts about Strymon Zelzah from Cringe Boy _123. What does it tell you about our culture that like there were so many other people who wanted the screen name Cringe Boy that this guy had to make his Cringe Boy _123? I mean, it's a little weird. There's like at least 122 other people who are like, no, 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 no. I am the Cringe Boy. The name must be mine. I mean, it's crazy. We got so many people sharing that username. Well, Cringe Boy number 123. My honest thoughts about the Strymon Zelzah. I think it's a good sounding pedal. You can get a lot of different modulation sounds out of it. This has been covered, but it can do sort of phasing, flanging, and chorusing. And then if you watch my video about it, there's some other things it can do. It can almost even kind of do ring modulation. I already had the Strymon Mobius before I got the Zelzah, and I'm a big fan of the Mobius. I think the Mobius is incredible. There's a million. I think the modulation sounds in the Mobius are good. I think they're great. But it can do all these other weird things, and I use it for weird things all the time. And you can put in the BPM of the modulation rate. You can set the speed with the specific BPM. And so a big thing I do there is I just use the Mobius for very exact, perfect tremolo rhythms, because you can also get a really, there's like a tremolo designer in there where you can pick sawtooth or square wave or rectangular pulse. Just as a tremolo pedal alone, Mobius is like almost worth the price. Don't kill me because I said almost worth the price, but it's almost worth the price. And the Mobius, it can also do in crazy weird things too. Like it can do sounds where you're like, I don't know what the fuck that is. Zelzah can do some of that. The versions of that the Zelzah can do is what I put in my video, but the Mobius can just do more. So to me, I just went back to my Mobius, but the Zelzah is cool and it's good and it's smaller and it costs less. So you make the call. All right. Here's the next question. What are your top 5 favorite guitar solos? Now, this is a hard one. I feel enormous pressure to get questions like this right. Here's how I'm going to come at this. I think what I'm going to do, I think I'm just going to pick like my 5 favorite guitar players, and then I'll just try to pick a solo from each of them that is like representative. Like I think that's how I'm going to do this. So if that's what I'm doing, I got to put Jimi Hendrix on it. Have to do that. what is my favorite Jimi Hendrix guitar solo? I think I'm gonna say "The Wind Cries Mary." I think I'm gonna say that one. There's 100 I could pick. The Bull Does Love solo I really like. That one's long. There's like key changes in it. It's very passionate. That's my favorite. Um, I like the national anthem too, the Woodstock national anthem. There was a while when I wished, like, I was a Jimi Hendrix fan my whole life, but there was a while when I didn't even think of the national anthem as being that cool because I wish that he like shredded more. Jimi Hendrix had been dead for a long time by the time I was born. When I started paying attention to music shit, people who wanted to shred had gotten pretty good at shredding. You know what I'm saying? So part of me just wanted to hear that kind of shredding in the national anthem when Jimi Hendrix played it. And he doesn't really do that. He does stuff that's like weirder than that. But I came back around on the weird shit that he was doing, So I love the national anthem too. And then also I like how it just sort of lines up with this like historical moment and the meaning of the national anthem, and the sort of commentary that was being made there. I like the more levels it has, the more I like it. Okay, but what did I say? I said "Wind Cries Mary." Yeah, I think that's a real heartbreaker guitar solo. I like how I like how short it is. It's like short and beautiful. He doesn't shred in it. Well, I think he does. My real message here is that he was like shredding all the time nonstop. Like he is shredding in the national, even if it doesn't have like Steve Vai level picking or it or whatever. I still think he's shredding because it's just like so cool and good. So yeah, the Wind Cries Mary solo, I think the phrasing is beautiful. It really feels like each sort of thing he plays in it feels like a sentence. It feels like he's sort of like saying these things, and it just is very expressive. It feels like he's communicating. It feels like there's a non-verbal language being spoken. Like if you hear two people speak in a language that you don't understand, it doesn't just sound like two machines making random noises. Like you can sort of tell like there is a conversation happening there. We just don't know what the fuck they're saying. I don't feel that way when I listen to like a bunch of junk rattle around in a dryer. You know what I mean? That doesn't sound like a language. That just sounds like random fucking noise. It might sound cool. I'm the kind of person who would hear chains rattling around in the dryer and be like, "Oh, why is that good? I got to put that on a song." But that's not what I'm saying right now. I'm saying there's like a vibe. Like you can sort of tell when like something has a meaning, you just don't know what it is, and something is just sort of like random and meaningless. As I'm saying that, it feels like a sort of vulnerable position to take. I'm sure people could push back on it, but I think cool stuff happens if you try to believe that. And so I'm going further with the belief and saying that I think like the key to phrasy playing, to the key to good phrasing is that it should sound like you did play something that has a meaning in a nonverbal language. And I think the solo to Wind Cries Mary is like a masterclass in that quality. I think it's annoying when people say such and such is a masterclass or such and such is a love letter to such. I hate when people talk like that. I feel like I don't like it anytime people start using the language of like the blurb of a commercial for a masterclass video, and that's me right now. But no Ask Me Anything is complete without me also becoming the thing I hate. So I'm glad we got that out of the way. Yeah, just the way the Wind Cries Mary solo is like there's there's like the chord and then the phrase, and then he strikes another chord and another phrase, and they sort of rhyme. I mean, they don't literally rhyme because they're not words, but like it just sort of feels like someone expressing themselves to you. And then the other thing I like about it is that it has that sort of chord melody. A big part of Jimi Hendrix's style was that he blended playing chords and playing single notes, and he could solo sort of with both. Like a lot of people think lead playing is when you take a solo and you play single notes, and rhythm playing is when you play chords and you strum so someone else can take a solo. He just sort of obliterated that distinction completely, and he would sort of make chords out of scales and play two notes that are a whole step and a half step apart, and like make chords out of things you would never make chords out of, and then play lines at the same time. Very advanced. And When Cries Mary solo has some of that vibe. You asked for 5 of these, right? I'm still on number 1. Okay. So then I gotta do Eddie Van Halen too. He's got to be on here. I mean, I guess it's Eruption. I guess Eruption is one of my 5 favorite guitar solos of all time. Everybody talks about it. There's other Van Halen solos I could pick. You know, there's a lot of Van Halen solos I could pick. The one for Ice Cream Man comes to mind. But I just feel like, let's be real, like Eruption is the fucking best guitar solo ever, you know? So yeah, I really love Eruption. I love that kind of shredding, but I love that there's the passion to it. And I love that he named it Eruption. That's so good. I love it when something just has like the perfect title, you know? Like there's no better recording. It's like, you know how Cringe Boy had to go Cringe Boy _123. You know what I mean? I'm glad that the song that got Eruption, before they had to start putting underscores and numbers after it, like the first recorded Eruption, I'm glad that it was this guitar solo, because that is like the most perfect audio that could ever go to something that has been titled Eruption. There's just like a real sort of perfect dedication there. It's just like, that is what that should be. So I'm gonna say Eruption. Then who are my other favorite guitar players? I feel like I should do a Prince guitar solo. I think it's cool that there's like, I mean, the guy took a lot of solos, but he didn't take as many solos as Eddie Van Halen did. And so I think it's sort of cool that, like, when I was getting Prince records and learning about each one and hearing them for the first time, I would always be like, I hope this one has a couple more guitar solos, you know? Like, I remember when I got 1999, there was like some shredding in Lady Cab Driver, but that's at the end of the song and it's at the end of the record. And I was like, oh man, when am I going to get more of that? You know? Or like the solo in Why You Want to Treat Me So Bad on the album Prince is like so cool. I was always like, if I could play like that, I would just make every song like that. So I feel like the Prince guitar solos are sort of like, there was a while in my life when I wish they were not quite as rare, and that every time I heard a new one, I was like, finally another one. But to me, the one that, like, I think I truly love the most is the solo at the end of Let's Go Crazy. I mean, he shreds there, you know, it's shreddy. But I also like that it's like that song covers so many bases. You know, it's this like up-tempo pop song, but it starts with this like spoken word intro. It has this sort of like intense mystical message. You know, it's just like kind of, you know, and then it's got his vocals, but it's got the female background vocals, and it's got like the cool guitar riff, but it's also got some keyboard shit in it. It's just like, that song is kind of just like doing all the things there is to do in an 80s pop song, and then some stuff you didn't know you wanted. And then you get to the end and it's like, well, there was the guitar solo during the song and that was cool, but what if you just shredded a little more? Is there room for that? And then at the end of the song, it's like, ladies and gentlemen, you asked for it, you got it, here's some shredding. So there's something like so satisfying about that for me. It's like when you open the freezer and you're like, did I finish all the ice cream bars, or is there one ice cream bar left? And it's like you're opening the freezer and you're like, I really, really hope that there's still one ice cream bar left. And then there is. Like, that's how I feel when you get to the end of Let's Go Crazy and he finally shreds. So that's one of my favorite guitar solos. I mean, at this point, I'm getting a little self-conscious about how classic rock this list is probably going to be. But, you know, that's who I am. This is the music that formed me. I guess I should put a Brian May a Queen guitar solo. I mean, the other thing I'm self-conscious about is like how many of these are going to be the obvious choices. But I feel like Bohemian Rhapsody might be one of my favorite guitar solos. I mean, which Brian May guitar solo am I supposed to pick? I don't fucking know. You know, there's one in Dancer. That would be the weird choice. The Dancer is a song on their synthesizer, like disco record called Hot Space, which is a record I love. and Dancer has some like real fireworks on it, but who the fuck knows what that song is. And what are some of the other great Brian May ones? Oh yeah, Brighton Rock, that's cool. But I just feel like Bohemian Rhapsody, like the guitar tone is pure ooze. It's it's very searing. It's got the shred quality. It's like pierces your eyeball the way like shredding is supposed to. And also rhythmically, he's like off the grid. I put that solo in one of my pedal videos. I have a pedal video about boss modulation effects, and I play the solo in that video. And I had to, I spent some real time with the record trying to figure out exactly what the timing of some of those phrases, and it's just fucking cool, the timing there. He's just sort of liquid the way he like moves through a measure of music. So that's 4, right? Then who's my 5th favorite guitar player? I don't even fucking know. Oh, maybe I should pick like a jazz thing. Maybe there's like a Pat Metheny guitar solo. I like the Pat Metheny guitar solo in Roots of Coincidence. Does anybody know that song? That's he uses distortion there. It's like maybe the only time. Oh, I guess it's probably not the only time. I think there's distortion on the Ornette Coleman record, right? Isn't there distortion on song X? But it's like one of the few times on a Pat Metheny group record that he uses distortion, and I think he sounds good. I think he sounds good. Roots of Coincidence. That maybe is that. That's a real, that's like a mind expanding song, and the solo is fucking weird, but the distortion sounds cool. It doesn't sound like everybody else's distortion. It sounds he found his own little thing, and it's good. I get why he didn't want to do more with that. I think I read an interview with Pat Metheny where he was just like, listen, like just a lot of people have decided to express themselves with distortion, and that's a whole world. And I don't really swim in those waters. And so I just want to leave it to the people who know how to express themselves better with it. It's like kind of what I was trying to say when people ask me about 7-string guitars and 8-string guitars. I heard Pat Metheny talk about distortion like that once, but I think the distortion sound he got and the playing he did on Roots of Coincidence was kind of cool. I was like, dude, if you wanted to do it again, I wouldn't mind, but I respect the fact that he didn't. I mean, here's another thing that comes to mind. This is another out there one. There's a Bumblefoot song called Don Pardo Pimp Wagon. I'm not saying that I really think that the title of that song is like the coolest thing about it. There is definitely a sort of like sense of humor with the Bumblefoot shit that's there. So there's a song called Don Pardo Pimp Wagon. And he's playing on it as bonkers, but then there's a guest solo from this guy named Matthias Eklund that is like glitchy and shredding and unbelievable. And every time I hear it, I just think like, I really, really wish I could play like that. Like there's a lot of guitar solos that I love that I'm like, oh, it'd be cool if I could play like that. But I play like me and I'm okay with that. And when I hear this solo, the Matthias Eklund solo at the end of Don Pardo Pimp Wagon, it makes me wish that I was just like, if I could play like that, I would be better. I would be a better person. Like the thing I'm doing is like incomplete because I can't do that. Like, and I don't talk about other people like that. So if you want to have your brains blown out, you should check that out. All right, let's get this one. Let's just bang this one out. Favorite pedal ever? Look, I don't fucking know. Okay, I don't know. I think the fact that I don't have favorite pedals and that I just take a pedal and force myself to find 5 cool things about it so that I can make a YouTube video about it. I think that's a big part of why I'm like good with pedals. Is because I kind of just assume it. There's probably 5 cool things you can do with this, so I'll just try to find out what they are. So yeah, I think that's a good attitude to have, is to just assume that like every pedal is great, and you just have to spend some time with any of them, and you can get a good sound out of it. you know. A big part of this, I think, is like finding the sound, and then when you hear the sound, just try to be like, well, what could I do with that? Like, instead of hearing how you want to sound in your head and trying to make the pedal sound like that, listen to what the pedal's doing, and then like try to come up with a guitar part that would work with that sound. See if you can do that. See if you can be like, oh, well, that sound isn't what I wanted, but that sound sort of, that would call for something completely different. It's like, if I wanted to play to that sound, I'd almost like have to try to sound like a Sega Genesis catching on fire. Well, guess what? Like, if you can now write a riff that sounds like a Sega Genesis catching on fire, that's going to be fucking cool, because the sound and the material are going to be like perfectly together. It's like writing a song called Eruption that sounds like Eruption. It's just like the most perfect pairing of execution and concepts you could ever have. So, you know, the more time you can spend living on that planet, I think the better your records will sound. And so a big way to get there, I think, is to just like, anytime you have any pedal in front of you, just be like, what if I was such an asshole that this was my favorite pedal ever? And then force yourself to try to make your favorite. But you know what, though? Since you came to my Ask Me Anything and you asked the question, I'll give you what you want. I'll just pick a pedal. I'll tell you what my favorite pedal is right now. You ready? It's the Alexander Syntax Error version 2. Okay? That's my favorite pedal. Is it really my favorite pedal? I don't fucking know, but it was here right now, and I do love it. And a lot of times, like, if I have to go to a session and I don't know what I'm going to play, I'll bring this, because there's a million different things it can do. And a lot of what it can do just sounds awesome and glitchy and great. So it's got pitch shifters in it. It's got a reverb in it that's really unusual. It can do some weird limited sequencing stuff that can really accelerate things. So for the sake of having an answer to this question, at this moment, my favorite pedal ever is the Alexander Syntax Error version 2. All right. This question, Eugene Martone versus John Mayer, who you got? Dude, I'm afraid to say this, but I really try to be as fearless as possible, and I try to confront every question so as to, you know, give my best to my many loyal YouTube fans. But I don't know who Eugene Martone is. I hope it's okay for me not to know that. I hope I'm not going to die. I hope that they're not going to send a drone to my house and kill me because I don't know who Eugene Martone. I have no idea who that is. On the other side is John Mayer. I had a whole YouTube video where I talk about why I, don't love John Mayer. It's not because I don't think he's good at guitar. That's not exactly my taste. But who the fuck is Eugene Martone? I mean, there's guitar players I like even less than John Mayer, so that could be Eugene Martone. Martin. Oh yeah, right. It looks like it, because then look, with Sam Hunley added a follow-up. He said it's Martone. Yeah, I don't know. I went to a guitar sleepaway camp, and one of the teachers was the shredder guy who was also named Martone. I think it was Dave Martone. Is Dave Martone the name of like a shredder from Canada? Because that guy was cool. I'm just gonna pretend we're talking about that guy, and I'll say that guy's my answer. Will Smith shows up at your Manhattan club gig. Jesus Christ. Walks on stage during your solo and looks like he's going to belt you. What does New Jersey Ivan do next? So the fact that you like addressed your question to New Jersey Ivan, indicating you've watched a couple of these and you know a little bit about my deal, I'm flattered by that. That does a lot in your favor, because I really, don't feel like we need me to address the Will Smith slapping incident at this point. You know what I mean? I just feel like that's like, what possible fucking angle could there be left on this? Like, I don't want to have to wade into this now. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, we got to go. I'm not going to, I'll return to this, but look at this. Eugene Martone equals Ralph Macchio. Is this a real comment? Does that mean that Eugene Martone is the name of the kid in Crossroads? Is that what you're trying to tell me? It's the Crossroads kid who, it's the Crossroads kid who plays that guitar against John Mayer. Is that the question? If I understand this correctly, I can answer that. I can tell you who I like more between the Crossroads kid versus John Mayer. But I just want to make sure I understand that what people are telling me here is that Eugene Martone is the name of the boy, the karate kid in that movie Crossroads, where he has to do a guitar duel against Steve Vai. And he wins by falling back on his classical whatever. All right, tell me if what I just said is right. In the meantime, I'm going to do the fucking Will Smith question. Jesus Christ. Look, I don't know. I mean, they say that like the key to winning any fight is to just get the first shot. Like you can't wait. If you're going to be in a real fight, like not a martial arts tournament or something, like you don't wait for the guy to give you a reason to hit him in self-defense. It's like if you think the guy's going to hit you, you just got to fucking hit him first and surprise him, and that's it. So by that logic, maybe I would strike first. But on the other hand, if Will Smith's move is just that he slaps you, I'm not going to go down from a slap. Chris Rock didn't go down from the slap. So I feel like maybe I'll let him slap me first, and then I'll just fight him. I think that's what I would do. Maybe I would. What? Let me return to the terms of the question. He walks on stage during the solo and looks like he's going to belt you. I think I would cut the song. I'd be like, drummer, hold on. And then I'll be like, Will Smith, you going to hit me or not, man? Are you going to hit me or not? Either slap me or get off the stage. I would say that, probably get smacked, and then unclip my guitar strap and retaliate. I'm not saying I would. I don't know how it would go. This is what I like to think I would do. I found the most upsetting, well, is it the most upsetting part? One aspect of the Oscars slap that did upset me was having to see Chris Rock like try to save the show. Do you remember this? Like where he goes like, that was the single greatest moment of live television. That's how he like tried to land on his feet as the host of the Oscars. And then it's like from there, it's like 2 seconds later, he's going, okay. And the nominees for best documentary are like, that was the most upsetting thing to me. Is it like, here we got this guy, like violence happened. And then the next thing that happens is that we're talking about which documentary is going to win an Academy Award. And like the way I understand he had to do it as host. I get it. I'm not criticizing Chris Rock. I'm just saying it was like this like horrifying glimpse of like the banality of it all. That like he's got to now contort himself to find a route. It's like the GPS has to reroute back to what is the chorus? Oh yeah, the chorus is handing out an Academy Award. I just feel like I didn't want to see that. I want to see Chris Rock fight him back. I wanted to see him fighting. I don't like seeing a guy get slapped, and then the next thing he's got to do is figure out how to give the award to which documentary. I mean, I don't watch the Academy Awards. I don't give a fuck. All I saw was the slap because that's the only thing that happened in our culture, right? So I saw the slap 100 million fucking times, and every time I was like, oh, I really don't like seeing him have to be like, and the nominees are. I just feel like that was like, dude, is that really what you got to do? Like, I don't need you to get to the nominees. Like, finish what's just been started here. You just, a guy slaps you and we go straight to the nominees. I mean, again, I'm not saying that I think like Chris Rock failed. Like, I get it that was like a hard thing to. It's so surprising that you just sort of fall back on your instincts, and he in the role of host. I get it. I just it's just hard for me to watch. It's just hard for me to see that and then see the move be like, well, we got to make sure the award goes to the right documentarian. I just feel like the documentarians can wait. You know what I'm saying? You can't just let a guy walk up on stage and smack you like that. I mean, did he go too far by making fun of Jada Pinkett Smith? I don't think the joke was good. It was a fucking G.I. Jane joke. You know what I mean? Like nobody even remembers that movie. Who cares about that movie? It's not a good joke. But I don't feel like I don't think it's offensive enough to have Will Smith walk up and smack him. I don't think it's offensive enough for that. I guess there's some level, I guess there's some level where you could say something would be so awful, even if it was, or is there a level? I don't know. I don't want to have to, I'm not the guy who should be in charge of figuring that out. I don't know. I'm just saying that I don't think when you get smacked by Will Smith on live television, the next thing has to be how quickly can you get to naming the nominees for best documentary. I just feel like you can take a little bit longer and like spend a little more time on the question of should you now punch Will Smith back. And if I was on Chris Rock's shoulder, I'd be the guy saying I think you should hit him back. I think you should hit him back. That's just, maybe I'm wrong. That's just what I think. Okay, let's go back to the Karate Kid question. Oh, I clicked on the wrong thing. What is your favorite Cure album? Man, I don't know the albums. I'm sorry, I don't know the Cure albums. I know the singles. What's the album that has just like Heaven, I guess? What's my favorite Cure song? Or what's the Friday I'm in Love? That might be my favorite Cure song. I remember the first time I heard it, I was just like, ugh, I don't have time for this. That was how I responded to the first time I ever heard Friday in Love. I was like deep into my metalhead phase. I was like, can someone put on Slayer, please? Like I had that reaction. But as much as I love Slayer and I continue to like Slayer more than I like The Cure, I have gone on in my life to receive why The Cure is cool and why Friday I'm in Love. I do sort of admire the pose, like the sort of emotional pose that he carved out and then occupied for that song. So whatever album has that song, I guess, is my favorite album. I'm sorry, I don't know the Cure albums. Okay, so now the question is, who do I choose between John Mayer and Eugene Martone? Am I understanding that Eugene Martone is the child in that movie Crossroads who has to do a guitar duel with the devil? And then the way it goes is that the devil is played by Steve Vai, and Steve Vai starts shredding, and it looks like the kid's gonna lose because who could shred like Steve Vai? And then the kid plays some classical thing, and Steve Vai can't do it. But Steve Vai is really Satan. I also heard that the kids playing there, his blues playing is actually Ry Cooder. So one interpretation of the question is, who do I like more, Ry Cooder or John Mayer? I mean, let me just start by saying of all these guys, my favorite is Steve Vai. Probably really on the strength of the David Lee Roth solo records. If you took those out, I don't know if I would like Steve Vai as much, just on the strength of Passion and Warfare and stuff. I respect it. But my favorite stuff Steve Vai did was when he was sort of forced to play in like a rock band context. I mean, I'm aware that he also played in Alcatraz and Whitesnake, and he's got some cool moments there too. But I think the David Lee Roth stuff is it for me. It's not going to get better than a song like Just Living in Paradise, not the Cure Paradise song, the David Lee Roth Paradise song. This must be just like living in paradise. It's not going to get better for me than like that song with the Steve Vai guitar solo in it. So I pick Steve Vai out of all these guys. I'm a little bit of like an anti-snob against like classical stuff. I have sort of a reactionary thing with classical guitar because like on forums, there's always the guy who comes in and says like, actually, the best guitar players are the classical ones. And then they'll name some classical guys I've never fucking heard of. And then they'll post some like video that's like shot on a camcorder of some classical guy at a classical reception playing shit that's like untranscribable. And I'm sure he is good, but I don't really care. I don't think that stuff sounds cooler than like, Van Halen music or whatever. So the fact that Crossroads is a movie sort of does this thing where like the highest card is the classical. It's like blues against shredding and the kid's kind of losing, and then he does classical guitar and that's the highest card you can play, and so he wins. Like I a little bit feel like I don't think the classical is that cool. Like it's fine, whatever, it's okay. Metallica with the orchestra is not my favorite Metallica record. When Keith Jarrett plays classical stuff, I think it's beautiful. I don't like it more than Keith Jarrett jazz stuff. So this is just me having sort of an attitude problem with like people said classical's better, but I'm not on that team, so fuck that team. That's all I'm really doing here. So I guess what I'm saying is it's hard for me because on the one hand, like that kid doesn't never, the kid just sounds like a kid, but then on the other hand, it's John Mayer because of and I'm not a huge John Mayer fan. I don't fucking know. I mean, who would I like more, John Mayer or Ry Cooder? I guess there's Ry Cooder stuff I like. I get because Rycooter plays what the kid plays, I think. Or maybe I have that wrong. Maybe I guess I like Rycooter more than John Mayer, and the kid equals Rycooter, so the kid wins, I guess. The kid wins. The kid beats John Mayer. Okay. All right. I mean, okay. I don't know why I don't. Usually, I get to an answer with these things, and I'm like, "Yeah, that is the answer," and I don't feel like that this time. But oh well. Um. Okay. For the guy who asked about synth programming, there's a good video from Red Means Recording called "So You Want to Make a Sound." It gives you all the basics about waveforms, filters, envelopes, and oh, see, this seems like a great answer. See, this is why I love doing these: is people helping people. Matthew Davis, thank you for coming in and having the answer. That's so nice that we had somebody who was informed here instead of me, who's just sort of coast on his like East Coast attitude all the time. That's great. I hope whoever that kid was asking questions about synths, I hope they're still here. I hope this was helpful to you, son. All right. Cool. Let's keep moving. Here's a pedal question. One pedal, one delay pedal. You can only have one delay pedal, but it can't be the timeline from Sad Boy Guitars. It would be the timeline. It's an easy question if I can just take the timeline. That's the delay pedal on my pedal board. It can do 100 million things. It can do any kind of delay, and it can do stuff that's unrecognizable as delay. So that's the answer. Since I can't do that, I really don't fucking know. I don't know. One thing I love about the timeline is that you can choose the tempo by BPM, and I'm not aware of many other pedals that can do that. Oh, can the Boss like DD 500 series thing, can that do that? Maybe I would pick that. I like the Keeley Dark Side. That's that's like the pedal that is supposed to be all the different sounds that David Gilmour used on Dark Side of the Moon. So it's got a fuzz, and it's got like phaser, flanger, rotary, or a delay in it, and the delay is a multi-tape head delay. I have a video about this pedal. You can look up my YouTube video about the Keeley Dark Side, and a lot of the pro tips in that have to do with the delay sound because it's multiple tape head delays, so it's not just like one thing that then gets repeated. You have like multiple delay lines, and you can do interesting stuff with that, especially at faster speeds where like you can't really differentiate them anymore. So it just sounds like your note has this sort of weird lifespan because there's a million delays happening right after it. Any multi-tap delay should be able to do that. The Strymon Volante could probably do it. I haven't spent a ton of time with that yet, so I don't know. I have spent time with the Keeley Dark Side, so I guess that's my answer. Been here the whole time. Can't think of a question. I remember you, dude. You were the first comment. You were the guy who said yo. Dude, that's okay. My favorite questions are the ones that are like about emotions or like trying to be creative. I think that's the highest level of question. It's been a while since I talked about this. I do think that there's a hierarchy of questions. I'm sorry. If I spend more time explaining this, I'm going to insult certain people who have asked questions, and I don't really want to do that. But I do think there's like levels. Like people who ask me about like, trying to be artistic or how to write songs or like how to deal with the crushing cruelty of our modern life or like how to be a musician without wanting to give up every single fucking day. I consider those to be my favorite questions to do. What I'm really, my long-term goal here is to pivot into being sort of like a lifestyle guy. What about that? What if I could be like a self-help man, but I could be like the non-toxic one? There's never been a non-toxic self-help guy, in my opinion. I've never seen a guy do like the self-help beat and not be just like a complicated force of pure evil. So, my long-term goal here with these Ask Me Anythings is to become like a good self-help figure, which might be impossible, but I do fantasize about that sometimes. And it's going to be harder to get there if the only questions I ever get are pedal questions, like what's your desert island pedal? But on the other hand, Cliff Yang, thanks for being here. Thanks for the question. What's my desert island pedal? Look, I don't fucking know. One of the Strymon multi effect ones, like Mobius or Timeline or something, where it has so many different sounds and they're all abusable that I can get many different effects. The first pedal video I ever made was about the timeline. And in it, I showed how it can be like a ring modulator, a chorus, a pitch shifter, a Digitech whammy style pedal. All that's in the timeline. That's the first pedal video I ever made. So maybe it's the timeline because I can do all that stuff with it. So yeah, all right. So that's my answer to the desert island question. All right, let's keep going. Here we go. What do you think Jimi Hendrix's synth album would have sounded like from the username Mall of No Return? That's a fun one, right? Because we know he would have made a synth record. I feel like he might have been I'm trying to think here. I mean, let's just sort of stake out some of the other positions, right? Like Led Zeppelin started using synths sort of late. Like they were using electric keyboards in a way that was cool, right? The clav and Trampled Underfoot is great. The Electra piano and Misty Mountain Hop and Rain Song is great. There's even a little bit of in sort of Underneath Everything in Stairway to Heaven. Anytime John Paul Jones was like playing one of those instruments, I think it sounds great. The synths then came in, as far as I know, tell me if I get this wrong. Synths came in, there's synth on In the Light, and I think that sounds good. But what I'm building to is that there's also synth on All My Love, and I don't think it sounds very good. Look, Led Zeppelin's like the greatest band ever, so don't lose your shit. I fucking love them. They're amazing. But I don't think All My Love sounds very good. I don't really like that song. I think it's kind of cheesy, and I think the synthesizers sound dumb. So that's like, that's worst case scenario for Jimi Hendrix, is that he just sort of gets a synth, and then whatever went wrong for Led Zeppelin goes wrong for him. Maybe he just falls back on one of the like obvious sounds you get right when you take it out of the box or something. I don't know why those guys couldn't get it right, but maybe it would have been that. On the other hand, I feel like I heard somewhere that Jimi Hendrix and Miles Davis had been planning a collaboration, and I could imagine that like Jimi Hendrix sort of doing kind of a synthesizer thing, sort of like Miles Davis, like especially 80s Miles Davis. There's like live Miles Davis shit in the 80s where he's got this whole band and it's amazing. John Scofield is in the band, and like Miles Davis just sort of walking around on stage, and like he's not really playing the trumpet, and like occasionally he'll go up to like a Moog synthesizer and like push a button, but like you can't really even hear what that did. And like it's a little bit unclear like what sound is Miles Davis making, like what is his like actual sonic contribution to what we're hearing. It's like totally band leader at that point. He's just like the onstage producer of it all. And I feel like the best case for Jimi Hendrix synthesizer record is that it would be something like that. It's like, it's not that he gets in there and is like, going like fully synthed out. It's more like there's a little bit of synth in there, and it's sort of like an ambient like texture thing rather than like, now he's gonna play keyboards. So I could imagine a sort of like abstract, spacey sort of fusion, like Miles Davis fusion synth record for Jimi Hendrix that could be cool. But maybe I'm not giving him enough credit. Maybe he could really play keyboards. Maybe he would just sort of get in there and like do shit like Eddie Van Halen did. Maybe it would sound like Dancing in the Street or Jump or like one of the good Van Halen keyboard songs, in which case I would love it even more. Have you messed around with the pocket operator? I haven't. They look cool. The only Teenage Engineering thing I have is the OP1, which I bought used. I really, at this point, try not to buy gear. It's not because I'm trying to be a snob. It's just because I have so much gear that like, I just try not to buy it. I try to see if I can get it. And I can't get Teenage Engineering to send me anything. I mean, it's like they don't even share my videos on Instagram. There's no hard feelings. I just don't think they're gonna send me some free shit anytime soon. So I haven't played one, and there's so much stuff. I don't even do half the stuff that my OP1 can do. I don't really use the tape machine. There's sequencers I don't really ever fuck with. So I'm sure I could be getting more out of that. So I'm actually not in a rush to like buy more synthesizers. Um, Okay. Speaking of delay as well as technique, have you had a chance to examine Extreme Nuno Betancourt solo on Rise? It's amazing that it's all technique. Yeah, that is a great solo. I thought that he does use a delay at one point. Am I wrong? I thought there is a part of it where he's got like the dotted eighth delay happening there. But is he picking all of that? I could believe that. That guy's a monster. That solo was really cool. It's interesting to me how much this song it has like broken through. Like I hear a lot of people talking about it on social media. People send it to me. I get text messages from people like, "Have you seen this new Nuno Betancourt thing?" The solo is awesome, but I also feel like every solo Nuno Betancourt has ever played has been about this awesome, and every Extreme song Extreme has put out has been about this sort of generic and meaningless, you know. So it's a little surprising to me that like this Extreme song it has like is having a moment. Like how is it different than whatever the Extreme songs were on Extreme's last record? You know what I mean? I don't remember which one was the last record, but like I'm sure Nuno shredded on it, you know, and like I'm sure the lyrics and everything else were equivalent to Rise. So there's a part of me that like doesn't really understand why this Extreme song now all of a sudden is like finally replaced the Will Smith slap as like the only thing in our culture. I don't know if you guys ever noticed this, but our culture only ever has one thing in it. And for about a year, it was the Will Smith slap, and now that's over. And the only thing in our culture now is this Extreme song. So it's just a little bit funny to me that this Extreme song became the only thing. Is it just because it's Nuno Betancourt's best solo ever? I mean, maybe it is. Maybe it really is his best solo ever, but I love the solo and Get the Funk Out. Like that solo was fucking nasty. And he's got a cool solo. What's the song that's called like Here Today or Gone Today or something? Doesn't Extreme have a song that's about like one hit wonders or flashes in the pan or something? It's called like Here Today, Gone Today. That solo's good. And Play With Me. The shredding and Play With Me is amazing, and the solo in He-Man Woman Hater is amazing. You see, I know my Extreme songs. You know what I mean? When I talk trash and say shit like the songwriting is always kind of generic and bad, I'm not just saying that as some asshole who like never gave Extreme a chance. Like I know Extreme. I know what I'm saying here. I guess maybe Rise is the greatest Nuno Betancourt solo, but if it is, I feel like it is by a hair. That guy has just been shredding nonstop since day one. So it's just I don't totally understand why like this is the song that everyone was like, oh wow, that guy can play. And maybe it's the best. Oh, look, I don't know. Okay, all right. What else? There was like a look at this one. What is the most recent significant life lesson? We'll see what happens, kids, is you tell the world that you want to become a self-help guy, and then you get this question immediately. You know what I mean? that's I almost feel like I manifested this. Isn't that how that's supposed to work? It's like you just say you want something and then you get it. And like that's kind of what happened because I said that I wanted to be the only non-toxic self-help guy who ever lived, and then I got this question. So it almost makes me believe that the secret is real. I still can't believe that like that worked for that person. That's fucking crazy. That there was like this woman was like, guys. I know how to do it. All right, here's self-help, all that shit. You don't have to do any of it. Here's all there is. You just say that you want something and then you get it. Like it's crazy to me that people are like, oh, cool. Yeah, we'll buy the book. It's like you don't need to buy the book, right? You could just say, I want the book, and then you'll get the book. Why are you giving her your money? You see what I'm saying? Like you don't have to do anything ever again. It's weird to me that theory was just not instantly squashed. Right? Because what happened when someone was like, okay, I want to manifest a cool $1 billion right now. Where is it? You know what I'm saying? It's like the Extreme thing. It's like, why is why did this get past the gate? I don't totally get it, but maybe that's over. Maybe it's my turn now. Maybe people have finally figured out that the secret isn't really how it works. And so what am I going to bring to the table? What is the most recent significant life lesson you learned? I mean, it's fucking hard for me because I don't ever really sort of be like, oh, there was the life lesson. Like that part never occurs for me. There's no part in my day where I'm like, you know what? Before I go to bed tonight, I'm just gonna take a minute to reflect. Like I don't ever do that. I just sort of keep toiling. I just sort of assume like you just gotta you just stay tense and like keep struggling and keep hurling yourself at it. And it's like the whole thing is just sort of like an endurance match. Whatever it is we're talking about, life itself, you just gotta fucking, you know, stay hard and keep banging your head against it. So as a result of that nonstop mindset, it's a little bit hard for me to be like, when was the last time I figured out that something was a life lesson? I mean, it's becoming clear to me as I talk more how difficult it's going to be for me to ever become anybody's self-help guy. You know what I mean? Like I'm manifesting the truth of how unrealistic that dream is. But let me see if I can get you something here. What is the most recent significant life lesson you learned? Um, you know, my therapist recently asked me if I had ever heard of like the last Japanese soldier of World War II. Do you know about this shit? There was a Japanese soldier in World War II who just like refused to believe the war ended. And after World War II ended, he just spent like decades in the jungles of the Philippines, like still campaigning as if it was World War II. He was just like living in the woods, trying to build trenches or whatever. And like people would try to tell him, like, war's over, dude. And he didn't believe it. And they would like drop pamphlets over the forest and he would like see the pamphlets and he just assumed that it was like American propaganda. And he like wouldn't relax. And he like refused to believe that the war was over until like the 70s. You know, they got his like original commander in the army. This guy was like 100 years old to be like, you are relieved of duty. Um, it's a little startling when your therapist brings this up. When your therapist is like, have you ever heard of this person? I had heard of the person. I was like, yeah, why? Like, what's your fucking angle here, doc? And she was like, I'm not comparing you to him. I was like, okay, it sounds a little bit like the comparison's already been made, but what's her point? She's like, I just wanted to know what you would think about him. Which is just like troubling for your therapist to be like, I want to know what you think about the crazy man in the jungle. What hot or not, Ivan, the crazy man in the jungle who thinks it's still World War II in 1974. What do you think, Ivan? Is he cool or not? I don't think he's that cool. I don't think he's that cool. I looked him up after my therapist asked about it. I heard of him. I looked him up. I don't think he's that cool. I mean, I get that, like, if I was a general in a war and I had to like put together a platoon, I would think he was cool then. I'd be like, get me guys like that guy. Remember the guy who just wouldn't back down no matter what? And even when the war was over, he kept going. Get me as many guys like that as you can. That's who I would want to lead into a war, is like guys who were just, their belief in the thing was so intense that they would just never fucking relax. But guys, guess what? I'm not a general in the military here. Believe it or not, I'm like a guy, I'm just a musician trying to, make some cool albums and like make some pedal videos on YouTube. So I don't actually need that guy to be in my band. I do feel like that guy is like the probably the what we ask a soldier to do, he's doing at the highest level. Like if you're just going to try to be the best soldier that ever lived, it seems like that guy's the number to beat. But the reason I don't think he's cool is that I looked him up on Wikipedia, and like Philippines news sources said that he also just killed people. Like he killed people in the decades after World War II. And that's why I feel like you can't just have the belief and then be okay because your belief is so strong. You know what I mean? It's like not cool that he killed people. I mean, who did he kill? There was no enemy combatants. You know what I mean? It was like probably just some like park rangers or something. Some people pitched a tent in the jungle in 1971. He was like, and then those people wake up dead. So it's like you got to be pro-social. As much as I talk about sort of like the importance of sort of like believing in something bigger, right? Believing in something bigger than pedals, trying to have an artistic mission that's just bigger than just shredding, trying to have like ideas as an artist that's bigger than just whatever. Like you also have to be pro-social. We all got to live in the world. That was the most. How did I even get here? What are we talking about? What is the most recent life lesson you learned? I guess the most recent life lesson I learned is that it's not cool that guy also killed people. You can't just be a man child who doesn't want to stop playing war. You can't just be like the guy. It's like when you tell a Ford, like, we're not playing that game anymore. This guy was just that in adult form, in like soldier form. And I don't think that's the coolest thing you can be. You gotta also, the reality of other people, you have to let that in. So that is my answer for you, Smurp. I'm sure it'll be very easy for you to take my clear and non-contradictory message and apply it to your own life. I wish you the best. Do you have aspirations to be in a touring band? Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, I like the things I'm doing now. There's a couple bands I'm in that no one knows I'm in because the records haven't come out yet, but there's some cool people on those records. And when those come out, there might be some touring that happens for your old pal Ivan. So it might still happen. I would say it's like not an aspiration away. It's just sort of like a release date away. But sure. But in the meantime, I like working on my own stuff and doing the YouTube thing too. What is the Krispy Kreme equivalent in the realm of guitar gear? That's a good question. I don't know though. Why do I like Krispy Kreme? I guess I have to start. Like, what does Krispy Kreme even mean? I mean, there's the difference. Oh, see, people who know more about this always then turn the conversation into like yeast donuts and cake donuts. Am I getting this right? This is like lesson one in like donut conversation world. Is it like cake donut is like what Entenmann's frosted donut or something, and a yeast donut is like what a Krispy Kreme donut is. So I like yeast ones more, and I like the Krispy Kreme donuts. Like I like the ones that are just sort of slutty and have a bunch of shit on them. You know what I mean? Like the salted caramel Oreo key lime dip frosting. Like that's one fucking donut. I like stuff like that. And I like Ben and Jerry's ice cream where it's just like a million fucking just like raunchy debased ingredients in the fucking ice cream at once. I like that a lot more than like, Haagen-Dazs chocolate ice cream or something. So what is the guitar equivalent of that? It's probably some like old gross multi-effects unit that like everybody thinks sucks, but it's actually got some cool weird sounds in it. I like it when it works out like that. I like it when it turns out that like the Zoom, some like 2002 Zoom pedal that had 9 modes that nobody ever took it seriously, but then it turns out that like the ultra distortion module, preset number 7 was like actually amazing, but no one noticed. I think stuff like that is cool. Top 3 melodic innovations. Oh, you asked me this on Instagram too, right? Except then it was like 5 melodic innovations, and I was like, I can't do 5. I like how you showed up and you're like, well, let's see if you can do 3. That's funny. Melodic innovations, man. I don't even know. I feel like I just have not been paying attention to this. Who's the guy who was like, we could sing more than one note? I feel like that guy's got to be on the list, right? If there was ever a time when like you could only just sing one note and like every melody was just some stupid one note thing that sounded like shit, like in the caveman times, everyone was just singing songs where the song was like, ah, and then the other dude's like, I got a new song. It goes like this, ah, you know what I mean? I don't know how many centuries of that we had to go through. And then one guy was like, you could sing more than one note. So I don't know who that is. I don't know who that is. Is that like what, who invented that? Did Sarah Vaughan invent that? Is that what like Nina Simone invented? I don't know. Whoever invented you don't have to just sing one note. That's number 1. Then I think on Instagram I talked about Stevie Wonder. I think Stevie Wonder can make any melody sound good. There's like a really cool chromatic downward run in Don't You Worry About a Thing that he makes sound great. It's hard when you get off your trip. It's hard to make that many fucking half steps sound good, but he did it. Then what else? I don't know. I feel like there's I think the sort of blending of like sort of hip hop vocalese with like pop R&B singing seems like a huge thing. And as far as I know, that sort of, it's like Beyonce is the queen of that, but I think maybe Mariah Carey also gets some credit for sort of like doing some of the early work to combine like virtuoso singing with hip hop elements. It seems like it's worth noting. Um, maybe people would push back on whether it like starts with Mariah Carey or not, or maybe this starts with Lauryn Hill. But it seems like right now, like that sort of Beyonce owns it. So something in that direction. Um, I don't know what else. I mean, who really sort of like in terms of soloing, like if melodic innovation counts, if we're including in that like how you solo over changes, then it seems like John Coltrane and the bebop guys also need to be in this, like that they would sort of take an approach to harmonizing what you're over. You're not just sort of playing in the key, you're not even just following the chords. You can sort of like take drastic departures from the chords and then sort of solo over that and then get back to the key, that move. I don't know if that's like an accurate breakdown of what bebop even is, but I feel like it kind of is. That seems like a big deal. I took guitar lessons from a guy in New York called Sean Driscoll for a while, and he showed me a cool trick. This is just a cool trick. There's like a lot more to playing music than just cool tricks. But one cool trick he said was that like if you have a minor 7 chord and then you just arpeggiate a minor major 7 over it. So it's like if you have an E minor 7 and you start playing and then you hit a G sharp, and you just like live on the G sharp for a second against the G natural of E minor. It's a tension, but it sounds cool. And that is cool. I don't consider that to be one of the top 5 innovations of all time, but that is a trick I use sometimes when I need to just like quick and dirty go out and have it sound good. And I think he told me that was a Wayne Shorter thing. I wish I knew enough to be able to say like 100% yes, that is a Wayne Shorter thing. Thoughts on Eventide H90? I've never played one. They seem like the real deal, but I don't have one. So I assume they're cool. I assume they're cool. What is your least favorite pedal guitar or gear company? Man, I said no question is off limits. I don't have a least favorite based on like a bad experience. I haven't had bad experience with anybody. And I feel like I'm going to disappoint some people by saying this. I feel like there's a lot of resentment towards YouTubers of a certain level who feel like they can't offend their sponsors. So they never say anything negative. And then people get frustrated that means they're not being negative. So it means they're sort of biased in favor of being positive. And they don't want to say anything to alienate future collaborations. Maybe I'm about to do that. I don't know. I mean, the truth is that I just don't have all the pedals I like are the ones I've talked about, and the pedals I haven't talked about, I really just don't have. I don't think there's a single brand where I tried to play them and I couldn't make them sound good. I have sent pedals back, but all the pedals I've sent back have been from brands where I like their stuff. I've sent back stuff from my favorite brands just because I didn't think I could make a pedal sound good. You know what? In the interest of just being like totally transparent here and like trying to go the extra distance so people don't accuse me of like just being a shill or whatever the fuck it is, I'll tell you the truth. The Alexander pedals put out the Rewind, which was like a multi-mode delay pedal. I think it sounds good and I think it sounds great, but I couldn't find 5 pro tips with that were different than the 5 pro tips I'd already found on the Space Force, which was their like companion reverb pedal, or their syntax era pedal, which I also love. I had the Rewind. I thought it sounded good, but I couldn't make a video about it that I thought would be me breaking new ground. And then you already heard me say, for people who've been watching from the beginning, that when I make a pedal video, I try to come up with 5 things that I don't think other people are going to talk about. And I just didn't feel like I could do that on the Alexander Rewind. if I included other stuff I've already talked about with the Alexander pedals. There's some cool sounds in the rewind, but to me, they were just like pro tips I'd already done on Space Force, pro tips I'd already done on Syntax Air. I made 2 Syntax Air videos too. So I feel like I'd already done a lot with like some of the cool Alexander sounds you can get. And with rewind, I didn't feel like I could come up with 5 new pro tips. So I sent it back. Every time I've sent a pedal back, it's been that story, and it's been a company whose pedals I like. I mean, earlier in this live stream, just to emphasize how much this is not a reflection of the shortcomings of the rewind pedal, someone asked me what my favorite pedal was of all time, and I said the Syntax Air from Alexander Pedals. So I sent a pedal back by the people who made my favorite thing ever. When I send a pedal back, it's just because I don't feel like I can actually find my angles on it or break new ground, not because I think the pedal sucks. I don't really remember the last time I played a pedal that I thought sucked. And I'm not just saying that to sort of avoid being negative. The other thing you got to know is that I don't really go to the guitar store and just play a bunch of pedals anymore. I don't really do that. Like every year, some number of pedal companies send me gear and I make videos about most of it. And then maybe I'll send 1 or 2 back. But I'm not really playing bad pedals, or I'm not playing pedals that I think are bad. I get pedals and I just think like, okay, here's 5 cool things you can do with it. I mean, that's the truth. I'm not trying to live in some sort of like Pollyannish fake world. It's just that it's like been a while since I played a pedal I didn't think was very good. Here's a good one. Do you leave powered stuff on for fear that next time they will die? No, I do the opposite, actually. I turn them off. I had some powered speakers that died because I left them on. Like I left, this was dumb that I did this. I had like powered monitor speakers on my desk that I just left on. And then I like went on a vacation. I was gone for like, a month and a half. And in that time, there must have been some weird power spike or something. I don't have it. Don't get on my fucking case. I don't have a power conditioner or like whatever the thing is that like regulates the power coming out of the outlet. I plugged my powered speakers into a fucking power strip. Judge me how you will. I paid the price. And when I came back and my speakers were just dead because I left them on. So I don't do that anymore. If I'm worried about losing a setting, I'll just photograph it with my phone. On my phone, there's a lot of just pictures of knob positions and settings. And then I try to write on the picture what the sound is for. It's fucking impossible to write a word on iPhone. Do you ever notice this? If you take a picture and then you like go to markup and you just try to write a word, it's like you can't move it. It's like the worst fucking user experience of all time. But I have a bunch of pictures with the word on it where it's like setting for new song. And then that's the other problem is it's like songs I'm just starting writing, so I don't know what the fuck to title them. So they all have the same useless title, which is like setting for new song. And then I'm like, well, I don't remember what the fuck song that is. And then I look at the next picture and it's something completely different. It's like setting for other new song. And I'm just like, oh, this is useless. So that's the answer to your question. Can you recommend an artist or song that has been your greatest finding lately? The stuff that comes to mind is stuff I already talked about. Like I mentioned, there's this crazy solo by Matthias Eklund in the Bumblefoot song Don Pardo Pimp Wagon. Look, if you think that song title is just like trying too hard, I do sympathize with you. But there's a solo in it that's just the most unreal shit I've ever played. But that song is from like 20 years ago. It just comes to mind because I was talking about guitar solos earlier. Can you recommend an artist or song that has been your greatest finding lately? The St. Vincent cover of Sad But True. I guess that came out like a year ago. But St. Vincent covered the Metallica song Sad But True. I love that. I listen to that all the time. Sorry, I don't have a better answer. But that's a great answer, so I'm not sorry at all. Yeah, dude, I know you can get a text box if you dig in the settings. That's what I'm saying sucks. I didn't mean that I was trying to draw a word, but that would not be worse than the text box you get. You get the text box, try to move that text box, try to change the color of that text box. It's worse than death. It's just the worst shit ever. All right. Any other questions where I feel like we're in the home stretch here? Oh, here's a fun one. Here's someone who, wants to see the guy behind the guy. Please tell us what you've been up to. Have you been writing any music? From David. Hi, David. Thanks for asking. Yeah, I just finished a brand new music video. That's why I haven't actually put out a pedal video on my YouTube channel like the last couple of weeks. It's because I've been just working nonstop on a music video. There's a song on my album where I covered a Tom Petty song, and by cover it, I like just changed it completely. It's called "Listen to Her Heart." It's a Tom Petty song I always liked. I covered it and completely fucked it up. It includes like a very long, terrible noise ending. It's like I had a fight with my producer about it. The ending of the song is just this like really ill-advised, gratuitous noise meltdown. I made a music video for this song that is like the most cyber attack video I've ever made. It's like very glitchy. There's special effects in it that is like probably the coolest stuff I've ever done. The whole thing sort of has like a certain look that I'm not going to give away, but as soon as you see, you're going to be like, oh, he did this. Like I like to most of the music. I'm trying to make a music video for every song on my Cyber Attack album, Hard Feelings. And there's only after this, there's only one left. Every song on that album has had a music video. And the way I think about these, I don't really like to make music videos where it's just like literally about the lyrics. Like for the music video, I try to come up with like a visual thing that is just going to be like just it's almost I sort of like come up with a mood board for what I want the vibe to be visually, and then the music video is just the mood board in video form. Like one thing I like about music videos is that it doesn't need to have like a screenplay. In fact, I think some videos that do that are like actually kind of just dumb. I like to make music videos like Sabotage by the Beastie Boys, where they were just like, it's just a vibe, and the vibe is 70s cop shows, but we're going to turn it up. We're going to just make them the sort of most 70s cop show of all time. And it's not going to have a plot. It's just, you're just going to follow it because it's just going to be the vibe. I love to do that. Or like the Beck music video for Where It's At, where it's like, there's no story. It's just like visual moods. He's at like a used car lot. It's just him wearing like a short sleeve white button up shirt and a tie walking around used cars. And it's just like there's something very vivid and very visually specific about the vibe of a used car lot with the like decorations with those little blowing flags, and like who else in the world is going to wear a white button down shirt with short sleeves and a black tie except the guy at a used car lot. It's like I don't know what the fuck that has to do with the meaning of the song Where It's At, but I buy it when I see it. So like that's the kind of music video I'm trying to make. So each music video I've ever made for my Cyber Attack songs has had like a very clear assignment like that. The first one I ever did was I Know the Feeling, and that the vibe there was basically just sort of like the Cyber Attack aesthetic. It was like very bright, very hyper, very glitchy. It had the action figures, it had the orange juice. It was basically just like the visual equivalent of like too much sugary cereal. Like when I was a kid and I would eat sugary cereal for breakfast, and I'll be like, this is exactly what I want. And then it's like it's over and you drink the milk, and the milk tastes like candy water. You know what I mean? It's like drink the bowl of milk after Lucky Charms was in it. It's just like drinking candy water. And at first you're like, yep, that is what I wanted. And then afterwards you're like, I don't know if that was good for me. I remember like I reached a certain age, like when I was 7, I never even felt that. But by the time I was a teenager, there would be the moment where I was like, it just sort of feels like the inside of my mouth is whistling. Like there's just this sort of like whistling inside my mouth. And like, it's like, it doesn't go away if I brush my teeth. And there was like, was it the right choice? I wanted the music video for I Know the Feeling to be like the visual equivalent of that feeling. It's just like bright and sugary and fizzy. And by the end, you're like, I ate too much ice cream. And then the music videos for Fantasy Killer and Scared Out of My Mind were like continuations of that vibe. Like those 3 music videos all have the same sort of story. And the story is just like, this is what Cyber Attack looks like. All the ingredients. Fantasy Killer was a little bit more about like racing cars, and there was like vehicles in it and like flying and going in turbo mode. That was sort of the angle on Fantasy Killer. And Scared Out of My Mind was supposed to be a little freaky and like a little scarier. And like some of the video game assets were from more violent video games, and some of the suburban stuff was more about like the spookiness of the suburbs. But those three music videos were all sort of just like, this is the visual identity of Cyber Attack. Then the video for Sure Thing, which I had a collaborator on, the video for that was meant to be sort of like exploding the Nintendo 64 era of 3D graphics, like that era of polygons and rendered 3D environments and like the models of the people in GoldenEye, like N64 style polygons was sort of like the mood board for the Sure Thing video. We took that and just tried to like obliterate it. Then the visual identity for Autopilot, the music video for Autopilot was based on like camcorder footage of me and my friends wrecking people's lawns as teenagers. And that has a look, the look of like, you know, video cassettes in like 2004 where you and your buddies are like filming each other puking in the basement, and then you go out and film yourself doing pranks and shit, and like the way colors look on those video cassettes and the sort of weird questionable things you and your idiot friends film each other doing, and like just the sort of like aesthetic of like a haunted videotape from the suburbs. That was the like visual identity of the Autopilot video. And then the Invincible music video is based on the visual look of Google Maps. I went to like street view of my hometown and filmed myself walking around the hometown, and then sort of artificially brightened it and sharpened it and really like tried to exaggerate the JPEG distortions of Google Maps photography, and to like step into that world, the world of like those Google Maps cars that have the fucking tower on top and those cameras. There's this like really just bizarre disembodied look you get from photographing landscapes that way. And so the Invincible music video is me trying to like turn that into a vibe. And then the new music video that's going to come out in a couple weeks is for Listen to Her Heart, the Tom Petty song. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it's a very new specific thing I haven't done yet. That is like the most Cyber Attack thing I've ever done. I'm actually worried about putting it out because I don't know how I'm going to make more music videos after this. This really feels like the last one. I have to make still a music video for the last song on the record I haven't done yet. It's a song called I Just Want to Talk. And then at some point this year, I'm actually going to record the next album, and that's going to be a thing. And I got to make music videos for that. I'm out of vibes. That's how I feel. I'm out of vibes. I don't know how to make a vibe after this next music video. But the people, my Patreon people and my YouTube members are getting a sneak peek of this music video tomorrow. There's an advanced look that only my Patreon people and YouTube members are going to get that goes live tomorrow. I'm excited about that. If you want to sign up, there's a link to that in my bio. Another way you could support the channel if you want to is I have affiliate links with Perfect Circuit. Perfectcircuit.com is just an online music store. If you want to buy gear and you want me to get a commission, you can use my affiliate link. There's a link to this in the bio. Just look for my affiliate link, click on that. After you click on that link, anything you put in your shopping cart, I'll get a small commission on. So if you have to buy a tuner or cables or a microphone or a synthesizer or pedals, any kind of music gear, if you want to buy from Perfect Circuit, you can use my affiliate link and get a small commission. Anyway, thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for the questions as always. I know sometimes I push back a little bit, but the truth is that I love all the questions. Any question that I put on the screen, I'm thankful for and I respect it. And let's do one more. Do you ever think it's going to be possible for artists to potentially build a network of venues that are outside the realm of Ticketmaster, more direct to audiences that isn't completely amateur hour? I think so. I don't know a ton about this. But didn't Fugazi do that? Wasn't that the whole Fugazi thing? And like, didn't they like even sort of not put the lights down? Like I never saw Fugazi, but friends of mine who did told me that like if you go to a Fugazi show, the house lights stay on, and you just like look around and you see everybody, and it's like that's part of the whole Fugazi community experience. You just all the lights are on, you see everybody, and you're part of it, and the audience is as much in the show as the band or whatever. So I feel like those guys probably did this. I would say, I'm sure there's other people who are working on it, but I would just say, you know, the way to do this would be to pick up where they left off. I'm sorry I'm not more informed, but I would say that's the starting point. I don't know why I felt compelled to do that one last question that I didn't even really know how to answer, but I did feel compelled. Okay, everybody. Thanks as always for being a part of this. It's always a pleasure. And I will see you next time. I just got to tread water a little bit while I bring up the goodbye video. Okay, I got it. Goodbye.